Hi guys, T here, back for another edition of the Mailbag. Now that we're all done with Season 3, I thought I'd sit down and answer a few questions that you guys have been throwing my way through D&D Stories. So let's get right into it. From several people, tell us about the Season 3 finale's making as far as music and artwork. Well, actually the ending sequence, and we're just for those watching in the future, we're talking about D&D Stories number 84, the Season 3 finale. The ending sequence was like 6 weeks worth of work for like a 2 or 3 minute sequence, but that was the part that I actually had the least to do with as far as like doing D&D Stories. I didn't do the artwork. That was Bree Kane, my girlfriend. She plays the dragon in the storyline segments. She's the one that like uses and abuses him all through Season 3. She's the one that did the artwork at the end. She's a very good artist. She works with young Rembrandts for like really little kids, teaching them how to draw and stuff. So she's a very, very good artist. And what I did was I got a bunch of printer paper and drew boxes on them like a comic book and made little stick figures and stuff, and then wrote off to the side what I wanted. And I think it ended up being like 90 frames of animation for that 3-minute sequence. So it was a lot of work on her part, and yes, I did compensate her for all her work and all that good stuff. And then as far as the music goes, you know, I looked back at you know, the Season 1 finale and the Season 2 finale, and you know, I realized, you know, out of all the episodes of D&D Stories, you know, I couldn't make money from any of my season finales because they have copyrighted music in them. So I called up, you know, Mike, the guy that does the music for the intros, and he's got a band, Neomantics, and I asked him, you know, Mike, I need music for the season finale because, you know, if I use copyrighted music, then I can't collect like Google AdSense or anything like that. And you know, it was and I strung the animation together the way I wanted it, and then I sent it to him. I said, can you put music to this? Just like, I give you completely free reign, whatever you want to do. Could you put music to this so that we can make like AdSense off of this? And he goes, yeah, it'll be fine. And so, you know, it took maybe a month to do the 90 frames of animation, just like to sit and do them all. And it took Mike like 10 or 12 days to do the music, so it took a lot longer in terms of just like production time. And I know D&D Stories is not big on production, except for like, you know, the episode on the Book of Vile Darkness or the episode on Talisman and stuff like that. There's very few episodes of D&D Stories that isn't just me sitting here talking. So having an animation sequence at the end of an episode was a big deal. And it took a lot of planning, a lot of work from other people. I'm not used to relying on other people to do stuff for the show, so it was kind of nerve-wracking, but at the same time it was very rewarding to see all this stuff come together, so it was very cool. Also from several people, what are you doing between Season 3 and Season 4? Because you're not coming back until August 7th. Well, right now I'm doing like 3 things. I'm playing Pokemon Blue, don't ask why, just for the nostalgia. I'm writing another dragon novel. For those of you that enjoyed Cyranox the Feared, I'm writing a second book called Toxica the All-Knowing, which, yeah, it's a goofy title, but I still love it. I feel like when you have a dragon involved, you have to have an awe-inspiring title to go with it. But, yeah, working on Toxica, and the guy that did the reading for Cyranox the Feared, Enzo, is going to be returning to read Toxica when it's done. Do I expect to complete it in a month? No, not really, but most of it, you know, given that I won't be working on D&D Stories, you know, my job is not very demanding at, oh yeah, I landed a new job. I'm working at a grocery store, but you know, it pays the bills. So it's you know, nothing grand, nothing fancy, but I did finally land a new job. And you know, D&D Stories also supplements my bank account. So putting out content, you know, I can't sit idle for a month, so I'm writing this novel so that people can listen to it and enjoy it. And, you know, I can collect, you know, ad monies now and then for that. What was the third thing? Pokemon Blue, new job, Toxica. Yeah, that's 3. Those are the main 3 things. Toxica, Pokemon Blue, and new job. From several people, will you do a character creation episode? Yeah, sure. I assume you mean for like 3rd edition, because most of the people that watch my show, I think, are people that play 3rd edition D&D. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you ask me for a certain episode, I will try to do it, definitely. From several people, what song do you use in the intro? It's called Hero Fall by Regda Cesar and Mike Entwisel. It was made for D&D Stories, so it's kind of cool. I have my own theme song that YouTube can't flag me for and all that good stuff. From Bernard 100, or Bernhard, I think it's Bernard. From the Bernard 100, what are good Pathfinder modules for a beginning DM and players who have never played before? I wouldn't so much start with modules as I would like beginning adventures, like really short things. Like look up like D&D 3.5's adventure box, and you'll find like there's a couple of dungeons that are 3 rooms long, but they show you a bunch of stuff. Or make up your own adventures and just like grab monsters out of the bestiary or the monster manuals or whatever. Make some of your own stuff, because actually following a module can be harder because you have to read it out of the book and do exactly as it says most of the time. And I've only ever run like 2 or 3 modules. I usually make up my own stuff, so. Also, can you make an episode on character creation? Yes. Yeah, we just did that. From Gaydolf, will you ever review the Testament setting for D&D 2.0 and 3.0? Sorry, I've never heard of it. Also, this is in no way meant to offend, but do you have autism? No. You sound and act a lot like my brother who has it. I'm sorry if this offends you. No, I don't have autism. I'm just a dork. There's a difference. From Gabriel Broom, or Broomy. There's an E on the end. Gabriel Broomy. Does the Book of Vile Darkness really deserve the mature rating? Yes, it does. Now, your definition of maturity may vary based on the comments that I've seen on that particular episode, but does it deserve the mature rating? Yes. I wouldn't want to see it in a child's hands. From Doom Shrig. Hey T, I've been struggling with a problem for some time now, and I was hoping you could help. Okay. Basically, I want to find a way to work divine creatures into a campaign, angels mostly, with some sort of demigod as a final enemy. I can't seem to think of a way to work them into a story short of having them descend from heaven and having the party crash heaven itself. So basically, have you ever used angels or demigod enemies in your campaigns before? And if so, how do you get them into the story without shoehorning them in? The best way to get angels to be your enemies, other than like having them be evil characters, is that they might like wreck something in a temple on accident, something like really important. Or they could go into like the ruins of a forgotten god and start looting the place, and that god is still alive or may have been asleep or something, but you woke it up and now it's pissed off because you're looting its house, so it sends down angels to kick your ass. Most of the time it would either have to be misunderstanding, misinformation, or like ignorance is no exception for breaking the law. So if you wander onto holy ground that you don't know is holy ground, and you do something that's against the religion that used to be there, but the God is still there, but the people aren't, so there's nobody to warn you, don't wear yellow here at night, or don't open a wine bottle here on Tuesdays, don't start a campfire here in the middle of the day, there's whatever weird religion laws you want to come up with to piss off a God enough. Like, I only made 3 rules. You are not allowed to cook here on Saturdays. You are not allowed to wear yellow. Stuff like that. Stuff that they're not going to know. That they would just suddenly get divine wrath sent down on them. Those are really the best ways, short of them being like supervillains, Or if you've got an evil bard, if he rolls like a 40, what is it, a 40 or better? Or 30 or better, in like his performance, it can attract the attention of extraplanar beings like angels, who may say, "Oh, evil bard! I hear his the raging of the beast music. I have to go kick his ass." That kind of thing. It could be by accident. It could be that you're ignorant of the place where you are that used to be separate. Things like that. I might do a video on angels and divine things, because they stat angels, and they stat, like, it's in Deities and Demigods, they stat all the circles of heaven and stuff, and they've got a picture of the rough equivalent of God in D&D, and it looks really goofy, but I need to do an episode on, like, Deities and Demigods and the Book of Exalted Deeds, because there's a lot of really good creatures out there that you never get to fight because they're lawful good, so why would you ever fight them? So that's actually something we should explore. From Mike, the guy that does my music. From Mike, how much does it annoy you that the Bestiary 4 doesn't align properly with the other bestiaries? Son of a bitch. Do you see that? They're all lined up nice, and then this one's further... Oh, God. God damn it, Mike. From Bruno Franco. Hey, man. I made a drawing of one of your characters. I made a drawing on the characters of your Cyronox novel. Tell me what you think. Oh, that's really cool. Look at that. Unminimize me. Look at this. Never gotten fan art for that from other people. That's really cool. Bree did the cover art and stuff for it for when we posted it up on YouTube, amongst other things. But seeing fan art like that, that's really cool. Thanks, Bruno. Have you made an episode about deities yet? No, I have not, but I need to. Did you ever create some of your own deities? No, but if you remember way back in episode 1, Spoonie the Bard became a god, so sort of. From Sekthe. Hi T, I was wondering if you have any advice for running a quest with loads of weak enemies, specifically how to keep combat from grinding to a halt. That's actually very easy. Say you've got your 4 heroes and like 10 goblins and 3 hobgoblins. So that's a fight with 17 participants. You don't want to roll initiative 17 times. Here's what you do. You have all your heroes roll initiative and, place them on the order chart. And then you have the 10 goblins. As a group, they get to roll initiative once. So if you go goblins, 7, or goblins, 15, or whatever it happens to be. And all of the goblins are treated as having that initiative. So you can just decide what order, between the 10 of them, who's going to go first. And then for, the 3 hobgoblins, you go hobgoblins, roll it once, 10, 20, whatever. And then when it's the hobgoblin's turn, each of the hobgoblins can move. I know that might be unfair, because like if all 10 goblins can move at the same time, they can all just gang up on somebody, but they're goblins. They're weak enemies. So, you know, you wouldn't want to do that with strong enemies like dragons or chimera, or, you know, God forbid you run into like a pack of dire wolves or something. You couldn't do that with upper level enemies, because that would just shift the tide of battle. Anytime like 6 wolves move, they could tear your face off. But for weak enemies, yeah, it doesn't really matter what order they go in, unless your party like cowboys straight into them. Then no, they're gonna get their asses kicked. If enemies are just like weak to the point where their only strength is their numbers, then yeah, they can move in any order they want to. They just move as a group, like kobolds, goblins, you know, first level enemies with classes, bandits, things like that. So then you've got, you know, instead of 17 initiatives, you've got the 4 heroes, you know, goblins moving as a group, and then hobgoblins. So you've got a total of 6 things on the initiative list instead of 17. From Red Goo 2. Have you ever used a timeline for D&D? I used the same world over and over, so I eventually had a timeline. No. I always use a different setting so that I can avoid the continuity alarm. So, you know, when something doesn't make sense because something already happened or something is going to happen, no, I always avoid that. From Ferg Fighter. Hey T, have you considered setting up a suggestion box email for potential subjects for you to talk about? I'd love to hear your take on world building. I would set up an email address, but a lot of times the comments that I get below the videos are people suggesting new episodes, and I don't want to like have all my comments move to, you know, an email inbox, because, you know, it churns up AdSense, it stirs up discussion, things like that, and I get to see like point for point what people want, like right below the video. So I've thought about it, but I decided not to. I'd love to hear your take on world building, or any worlds that you build. I really don't build worlds so much as like regions. I know it's important sometimes, like if you want to like design a continent, you can, or a series of islands or whatever, but if it doesn't really concern my campaign, like I said, I don't really use continuity very much, or what is it, timelines very much, because I hop from setting to setting. So there's really no reason for me to design a world. And if I do design like an odd setting, like I said, like don't wear yellow, or don't build a campfire on Saturdays, things like that, I'll write like a list of rules. Or like, you know, you live in a desert region, so you can't take any points in swimming, stuff like that. I'll write down like 10 things and say, here, these are the special rules that go with this campaign, and just hand it to somebody, or just hand it to the players. I really don't build on like a large scale, because there's really no reason for me to, unless you're commanding armies or like playing Kingmaker or something like that, where it just involves thousands of square miles in whatever capacity. There's really no reason for me to design a whole planet or a whole continent or anything like that. I just like, I build the reserve, and if they wander off the reserve, it's, you know, you can go find a town or more forest or a desert, or there's an ocean there. But, you know, that's not what the campaign's about, so there's not going to be a lot there. You know, I don't waste my time with details outside of what's important, because then you would just be building stuff forever and it wouldn't matter. Because your players know where they're supposed to be, and 90% of the time they won't wander off the reserve. Like if your campaign takes place in a city, unless they're just going to be dicks, they're not going to leave the city, because that's where the action's taking place. From Jackman217. What would you say is your least favorite character class? Monk. What is your least favorite alignment? Chaotic neutral. From Werewolf017. What about physical exertion, illness, disease, and permanent limbs torn off, wrenched muscles, and things like that? Well, then I guess your stats would take a big hit because, you know, if you're tired, sick, have a disease, or missing limbs, then from a battle or whatever, your stats would have to take a major hit. Whether that be permanent or not. What would you do if a major NPC died? Well, you've gotta carve the story, and being that D&D groups that I went with were usually at least a week or two apart between sessions, you know, that's plenty of time to recarve a story, or have somebody's brother show up, or have a messenger, or a, the princess died, but her little brother, the prince, is still missing, stuff like that. There's ways to work around it, usually. It's like when you're tracking orcs. You know, if the orcs take off into the woods and your ranger steps up and, like, rolls his track and he rolls, like, a 3. So, yeah, the orcs got away. Oh, well. You know, do you want to play D&D or not? You know, you've kind of got to chisel out a second way for them to do things if a major NPC dies. From the MMR11. T, what do you tend to do if players don't own their own set of dice? Well, I've got this big thing of dice here. So there's at least 5 or 6 sets of dice in there. They're not going to be pretty like the ones that I use, but, you know, they're from different starter sets, different games, and things like that. So I've always got spares. I personally give them a plain black and white set of dice and let them spend their character's gold to get access to some of my better dice. You're a horrible person. Not to keep, of course, just when they play those characters at my table. Why? Can't you just lend them your dice? It's kind of selfish. Or rather, that's putting them at a disadvantage because they didn't go out and buy strangely sided dice, especially when they know that you've got extras. So, you know, they have less gold because they didn't go out and buy their own stuff. Kind of a dick move, to be honest. I thought you might want to talk about what to do about undersupplied players. By the way, some of my coolest dice are temporarily unlocked for cool ideas and good role-playing. You are a very strange person. As far as undersupplied players, well, if you're DMing, all you really need is like paper and pen to draw the maps on and, you know, write the story and have it in front of you. You know, you can find monster stats and things online as long as you've got dice or a computer with a dice rolling program on it. There's really no such thing as undersupplied. Or if, you know, you can run a game with one set of dice, you know, it'd be awkward to hand them back and forth as far as between players and DMs, but, you know, pen, paper, and one set of D&D dice, that's really all you need in terms of running a game. You know, if they don't have figs, they can use coins or pogs or whatever. From Jason Cutugno. Yeah. Jason Cutugno. I was wondering about your opinion on the midnight setting. Never heard of that one. I need to do some homework on settings, apparently. People keep asking me about different settings, and I don't know anything about them. I find it a really interesting setting, and it's inspired me to attempt my first game to run. Good luck. From Chris Gomez. How does a D&D tournament work? Yes, I mentioned D&D tournaments not long ago. A D&D tournament, Chris, back in the day when Wizards of the Coast had firmer balls, I guess is the way to put it, they used to come out with what were called tournament modules. If you've ever heard of the Tomb of Horrors, which was basically a module that was built to be a meat grinder and kill you in the most imaginative ways possible, in really unfair and very sudden ways, they would at like Gen Con, Dragon Con, Comic Con, people would show up with really difficult modules published by Wizards of the Coast, and the players would show up with like a stack of like 5 or 6 characters, and they would sit down, and the company, hopefully, would supply DMs to sit there and DM these games, and people would just wander up. You know, it would say, you know, this game will begin at 11 o'clock, or this game will begin at 1 o'clock, or blah, blah, blah. And people would show up, sit down with their character sheets, and they would look at the character sheets and make sure they were legit. And they would run you through the module. And, you know, being that they were, you know, quote-unquote tournament modules, they were built to be more difficult. So it was easy to die, it was easy to get poisoned, it was easy to get insta-killed. They would make modules so not so much on finishing them, but seeing how far you could get without dying. So they called them tournament modules because not everybody would get through them, and if you somehow survived, you got bragging rights. Sometimes you would get prizes, you would get, you know, little certificates that say, I survived the Tomb of Horrors, and, you know, the officiator would sign it, or you get a little gold seal or something. Sometimes they would pass out like cheap little iron medals, say, you know, Gen Con 2001, I survived, and then you would turn it over and it would say Tomb of Horrors or Jungle of Madness or whatever it happened to be. It wasn't so much a tournament in the traditional sense, like you're against other people. It was that they would bring these killer modules, and if you somehow survived, sometimes you would get a prize. And if not a prize, then at least bragging rights. So that's how D&D tournaments work. That's really all right now. As far as Season 4 goes, I am going to start up again on August 7th. I'm thinking of running a side series to keep my channel going so I'm not just gone for a month, called Class, in which I'll be talking about different classes from different RPGs, whether that be D&D, Pathfinder, Final Fantasy Tactics, things like that, where things could use explaining, or things that need clarifying, like the rogue sneak attack. No, you don't have to be behind somebody to use sneak attack. That's backstab, and that's World of Warcraft. So, just like looking closely at the rules like we did with Paladin Research, I'm going to run a side series that's just talking about individual classes, so it doesn't have to, number one, it doesn't have to wait for D&D Stories to start up again, and number two, so that my channel just doesn't die down for a month and I don't see you guys or anything. So look forward to that, and I guess that's all for now. That's all for this month's mailbag. So until next time, keep gaming.